This is ICAST News, live and direct from the United Nations. I'm Linda FASULO. Joining me today is Iraq's top diplomat to the United Nations, Hamid AL-BAYATI. Ambassador, welcome.
Thank you, Linda. It's nice to see you again.
Thank you. It's been a little more than a year since the Iraq War officially ended. U.S. troops left the country, and in essence, Iraq has been on its own during that period. Where did things stand in terms of efforts to attain political reconciliation and unity?
Linda, we have to be realistic. Iraq is a newborn democracy. Few years will not make a stable, completely stable democracy. Take any democracy in the world like the US or UK or other countries. It took them a long time to be stable. I can say Iraq now is much better than 2-3 years ago. I went back to Iraq twice last year, September and February. And the situation was much better than in 2006 when Al-Qaeda blown up a holy shrine for the Shiite, and then some Shiite extremists or ignorant people started to attack Sunni mosques and vice versa. And then we were on the verge of full-scale sectarian war. So today I can say there are things which is much better. However, service is still not as much as people hope.
Well, I know that recently there have been some severe terrorist attacks that have killed hundreds, and even more recently there have been, I think, the first deadly clash between anti-government forces and the army. How serious is that? Is the government very concerned?
Well, everybody is concerned. However, according to the Constitution, since we have a democracy, we have the freedom of demonstrations. And people demonstrated, the government listened to their demands, they sent certain envoys to listen to them. And one of their demands was to release people from prison, and we released more than 1,000 people who were arrested but not convicted. They were under investigation. They demand the release of some women who were participating in terrorism but not directly, like women who have men in their family who were involved in terrorism. They were arrested or sentenced to some kind of sentences. They were released. Even crimes not like connected to terrorism. In the end, we try our best, and the government try its best to listen to people who are demonstrating. But I have to say that things in the Middle East are spilling over, like the situation in Syria.
How is that affecting Iraq?
It's affecting Iraq because, first of all, demonstrations are everywhere in Syria and other countries in the Middle East. Second, we have terrorists who came across the border from Syria to Iraq. And these kind of what they call Arab Spring is really giving a chance to terrorists to rise up again, just like what happened in Benghazi. After the United States helped the Libyans to get rid of the dictatorship of Muammar Gaddafi, they attacked Benghazi and they killed an ambassador plus 4 other American people. So Iraq is not an exception. There's a spillover from Syria, from other countries. This is why really we need to unite and fight terrorism altogether as humanity, as a citizen of the world.
I know some U.S. lawmakers have voiced concern about Iran's use of Iraq's airspace to send weapons to Syria. What's your reaction to that?
Well, let me tell you, first of all, Iraq comply with all Security Council resolutions, especially those about sanction against Iran, one. Second, we managed to ground certain airplanes when there was suspicion that they could have arms. We didn't find any. And during the Joint Assembly last September, Secretary of State, we had a meeting with Secretary of State, and she raised that issue. And then a couple of days later, I saw her. She was in a meeting in the United Nations about small countries, and I talked to her again. I said, "Don't prove me wrong." I said, "No, we will not prove you wrong," because in the meeting of the foreign minister, actually she said to Arab foreign ministers that Iraq promised to stop any kind of airplanes carrying any weapons to Syrian regime, and I believe they going to do it, and we did it. So we are sure that if any airplane with doubts or any kind of concern, it will be grounded and to be searched. And by the way, I have to mention here that North Korea wanted to send one of her airplanes to Syria via the airspace of Iraq, and we rejected that demand.
When was that? How recently?
That was a few months ago, and we provided the United Nations Sanction Committee with the details, and they want more details about that airplane, and we provide them with all the details. When we have our doubts that this airplane could take weapons from North Korea to Syria, we stop it. We didn't allow it to fly through the Iraqi airspace.
But is it your sense there have been more recent attempts by Iran to transport weapons?
We made it clear to the Iranian government that we will not allow, none whatsoever. We have no interest whatsoever to allow weapons to go to either side of the war in Syria, neither the opposition nor the regime, for a simple reason. Because the regime is armed, the opposition is armed. Who is the victims? The civilians, children, women, elderly people. And we had this bad experience in Iran when Saddam invaded Kuwait, when he had wars, with the whole world, when he challenged UN resolutions. Iraqi people were the victims. So we don't want to let Syrian people be the victims.
Well, of course, the United States is very, very concerned about Iran, and it's under Security Council sanctions, and there's the demand for it to stop enriching uranium because of fear of the creation of nuclear weapons. Can you elaborate a little bit in terms of your country's relationship with Iran these days? Because again, in Washington, there have been reports that there is some concern about the status of that relationship.
Saddam had 8 years war with Iran between 1980 and 1988. We didn't get from that war anything except destruction, killing of Iraqis, missing people, handicapped, etc., etc. We cannot solve our problems with any neighboring countries by force. This is why our principle after 2003 to have peaceful relation with all neighboring countries. We are trying our best to help the international community, including the United States, to understand the situation in Iran and try to reach some kind of an agreement. We hosted negotiation between United States and Iran in Iraq. We hosted a meeting for a P5+1 about nuclear issues in Iraq. We tried to help to solve this problem.
How long ago? That was a few years ago? Or?
No. It happened last year. Last year we have the P5+1 meeting in Iran.
Right.
But the issue of U.S. meeting Iranian, that was many years ago when U.S. forces were in Iraq, and they were interested in both countries to come to an agreement about the situation in Iraq. But we are ready to help. And we think, as the U.S. believe, that we will follow a peaceful negotiation, diplomatic means to solve the problem before we think of any kind of military action. Because military action will be destructive, it will backfire on many countries, many regions, and could be counterproductive.
But does your country think that Iran is getting closer and closer to producing a weapon? I mean, obviously there's great concern in Israel, and the United States is also concerned.
Well, one is that Western intelligence, even Israeli intelligence, believe that there is no order so far to build a nuclear bomb. However, according to the NPT, Iran and any other member of the NPT has the right to have a nuclear power, nuclear energy for peaceful means. One. Israel is the last country who could be concerned because they are not a member of NPT. God knows how many nuclear warheads they have. I just saw a documentary last night that they were misleading the U.S. government when President John Kennedy pressed the Israelis to make sure it was peaceful project, and he sent inspector to demon a reactor, and the Israeli managed to hide the secrets. It was for military purpose, for nuclear weapon, but they even misled the U.S. that it was for peaceful, and the whole world discovered later that it was for military purpose.
Just following up a little bit on the question of Israel, how do you characterize relations between Iraq and Israel these days? And do you think they will improve at any point?
Iraq is part of the Arab League, and we have a peace initiative on the table since 2002. It's very simple. All Arab lands which were occupied in 1967 war by Israel should be giving back to the Arabs, and then the whole Arab world will have peace with Israel, including Iraq.
I see. Well, can we also again turn back to relationships, because I think people are very interested these days. We haven't heard that much about Iraq in the last year as the U.S. has departed.
We say no news, good news.
No news is good
because
news.
Iraq is in a good situation. They report about other countries. We used to hear about Iraq every day in the news and the headlines, you know.
Right, and now it's more quiet.
Yes,
but
exactly.
If I may I just ask you, how would you describe, for example, the relationship with China in terms of political, economic, military, or other kinds of relations?
We have very good relation with the whole world, including China. And Chinese government and Chinese company are investing a lot in Iraq, especially in oil and gas. And I have to mention, this is very important, the Americans sacrificed lives, more than 4,000 soldiers. They sacrificed money. And we believe that those countries who help Iraq to get rid of Saddam dictatorship and to build democracy, they should have priority in investment. And with this economic crisis, this is the message to the new administration of President Obama. You have to take care of your business in Iraq, because we signed 2 agreements with the U.S. in 2008. One for U.S. forces to leave by end of 2011, which is status of forces agreement, the SOFA. The second one, strategic framework agreement about economic relationship, trade, businesses. And we encourage American company to invest in Iraq, because this could help with solving the economic crisis. Iraq has ample opportunities, big market for oil, gas, and all kind of trade and business.
But is the United States, given the long association with the United States, as you've mentioned, and its important role, is there any special status accorded the United States or U.S. businesses in terms of reaching out and cementing economic relations with Iraq?
Yes, of course. As I said, the strategic framework agreement states that we should have some kind of special relationship, some kind of alliance on all levels. As I said, after the U.S. forces withdraw from Iraq, now it's the era of all kind of relationship, political, diplomatic, trade, business, and really we hope that big American companies will come to. We already have big companies like ExxonMobil in oil and gas, but really we need more and more investment, and I think the American company will find that Iraq is the best market now in the world. Our budget doubled many times in the last few years.
And now turning to a completely different issue. We know that young people comprise a large portion of the world these days, and certainly have played a big role in the Middle East and the Arab Spring. I understand that you are very interested in youth and that you'll be speaking before the UN Youth Assembly soon. Can you elaborate on that?
2011, the United Nations adopted a resolution to consider that year as a year for youth, International Year of Youth. And since then, I was involved with youth. What I did basically, even before 2011, students who will come from different states, I will give them internship in the United Nations. I have students every summer coming from South Dakota, Utah. A couple of days ago, they wrote to me to say whether I could take some interns this summer.
So these are American students?
These are American students.
Young people?
They come for internship, and even non-American who are studying in American universities. Since then, I've been trying to help youth to have internship in the UN, because basically now the UN believe in youth, and Secretary General just appointed somebody as a special envoy for youth. And we believe in order to have better future, we have to have better leaders, and the best way to have better leaders to educate youth who are the leaders of the future, to understand what the world, what problems the world is facing, and how they could think of solving it in the future. So on Thursday and Friday, we'll have the Youth Assembly. We'll have several hundred youth who will come to the UN. I will deliver the keynote speech, and of course, I will answer their questions, and then we'll be together for 2 days in the United Nations.
Well, on that note, Ambassador, I'd like to thank you very much for joining us, and hopefully you'll come back soon.
Thank you, Linda.
This has been ICASTnews.com, live and direct from the United Nations. I'm Linda FASULO.